Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Grandstand Gurus, the #1 sports podcast on the Explosion Network. I'm your host. My name is Jack Kruse, and boy, oh boy, am I excited about this one. I have never once had another Bulldog supporter on this podcast before. So tonight, I decided I'd get two. Strap in, Dogs fans. Tonight, I've brought two very important people to talk all things footy. The footy season is upon us, and we will be talking AFLW, AFLX, and we'll be indulging a little bit in our beloved Bulldog. So joining me tonight, first, we have digital content writer for SEN and commentator for the Southern Football League, passionate Doggies supporter. It's Big John Takemura.
Jackie boy, how are you, mate?
Very good, mate. Very good. Great to have you here. It's been a long time.
It's been a while. You've been trying to get me on for a while. I know that, and I'm finally here, mate.
You're a hard man to get a hold of, mate. Oh, Hutchie, he's come in and he said Big John is exclusively to SEN, but we've been able to pry you away for an evening of Bulldogs talk and football talk. So thank you for joining us, mate. And also joining us tonight, we've got host of the Bev Show and a devout Bulldogs man himself. It's Jacob Beavis. How are you, Jacob?
Hi lads, great to be here, and yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Did I say that right? Did I say it all?
Yeah, no, perfect.
Spot
That's
the way we like it, mate. That's how are we, gents? Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here tonight.
That's okay. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Guys, tell the if our listeners don't know much about you, tell us a little bit about yourselves and I guess your love of sport and footy. John, we'll start with you.
So I've been a Bulldog supporter all my life. My mum and my nan lived in Williamstown, so I pretty much got ingrained into being a Bulldog.
Yeah.
And love footy all my life. Love footy, soccer, all my sport. Been calling footy at local level for the last 6 or so years. Really enjoyed doing that. And been at SEN now for 2.5 years doing their digital content online, so getting articles up, content for the website and all the social media stuff. So it's been really good.
Oh, nice one, mate. Very good. It's a pretty cool, I imagine a pretty cool place to work. SEN around all the different sports personalities, and just got the big scalp, Jared Waitley, who's my personal favourite in the industry. I'm hoping to get him on the show one day. That must be pretty exciting to have Jared walking around the office on a daily basis.
Oh, it certainly is. It's put a bit of a new spark into the place, and I know your love for him, Jack. I've seen a couple of your tweets showing your appreciation for the great man. Just come back from the Super Bowl in Minnesota, went all the way there. First Australian radio call by a Australian broadcaster. So that was a pretty big start.
Called it beautifully.
Oh, he did, didn't he? I have to say, that was absolutely fantastic. Like, I listened to that, like, I was driving that day, I was out on the road for work, and basically listened to the entire call, and I just thought it was phenomenal. And I went back and watched, like, the NFL post, like, a 45-minute highlights of the game, like all of the sort of, I guess, big plays and that kind of thing. And it was just, compared to Jared's calling, it was just, there's no passion, there's no excitement from the American callers. So, it just goes to show the talent that Jared brings. And Jacob, a little bit about yourself.
Yes, well, they call me Bev, actually, and love my sport. I'm a passionate Doggy supporter. Love my AFL, probably my #1 favourite sport. But I love other sports as well, cricket, the Big Bash, and also love my horse racing as well, and a few other sports as well. So currently doing the Bev Show at the moment, which is working out pretty beautifully for me at the moment, and hoping to get a Doggies live stream show happening very soon as well. So everyone should stay tuned for that.
Absolutely. Well, once again, guys, thank you for getting on tonight. Let's kick right into the episode. What were all of our highlights from the past week? Start with you, Jacob.
Well, I'm going to go local, actually. I live in Hobart, and I'm going to go... I was actually fortunate enough to be at the Hobart Cup, which is a big horse race here in Hobart, and it was a South Australian horse that got up, Pretty Punk. I thought that was pretty special. Ben Allen was the jockey, it was a fantastic race, a strong field with a few interstate horses, as well as a mixture of our very own Tasmanian talent. And yeah, it was great to be there. It's one of my favourite races personally. Yeah, Pretty Punk got up. It was a good win and an enjoyable race. So that's my highlight. The Hobart Cup, Pretty Punk's win.
Is the summer racing carnival quite big down in Hobart? Like, what's the scene? Obviously, here in Melbourne, spring racing carnival's massive. It sort of takes over the town for that sort of month period. What's the situation in Hobart?
Well, it's yeah. Look, we start off with, I think, about 3 big days here in Hobart before the big one, being the Hobart Cup, and that seems to attract a lot of people. Derby Day is probably the second biggest, and that was on the Friday before, so it was last Friday before the Hobart Cup on Sunday, and a few people got out to that. It's probably not as big as the Spring Racing Carnival, definitely, but there is a few people that turn up. And I'm actually going to be travelling to the Launceston Cup in a couple of weeks, and going to be fascinating to see how the Launceston Cup compares to the Hobart Cup, because I've heard that the Launceston Cup is quite big up there compared to the Hobart Cup down here in Hobart. So, yeah, a few people turn out. It could be more, but I personally love the Summer Racing Carnival. It's a great time of year for horse racing here in Tasmania.
No, very good. Very good. John, your highlight.
Well, it wasn't necessarily the biggest week in terms of big events, but my highlight has to be last night, Matty Graham in the men's moguls final. He was outstanding last night in that, and I must admit I'm a bit of a skeptic with the Winter Olympics in terms of seeing it as a bit of rich kids using I guess the opportunity to show off their wares. They've been in the snow all their life. It's a bit different, obviously, to a
lot of Melbourne supporters.
Yes, but his performance last night was outstanding, and not only that, I don't know if you guys heard Dirk Nannis, the former cricketer, on the commentary.
Yeah.
His knowledge of skiing. I mean, I had no idea he was even a former skier, but that was his actual former career.
Yeah,
his knowledge.
I'm with you there, yeah.
And not only his knowledge, but his ability to sort of tell the layman person who knows very little about mogul skiing. I felt like I knew exactly what was going on, who was scoring well, who made the mistakes, and there was that many spills and tumbles last night. Matty Graham did a darn good job to stay on his feet, I thought, and the only bloke who beat him is the guy they call the GOAT, Mikhail Kingsbury, who's 6-time world champion, won that many World Cups, I've lost count, and he was basically completing the set last night, and it took a brilliant run from him in the final part of the event to get over the line, but only the 11th guy to win a medal for Australia at the Winter Olympics, so well done to you, Matty Graham.
Well done, Matty Graham. Shout out to you. Good, sir. My highlight came from the UFC event over in Perth over the weekend, which was UFC 221. I don't know about you guys if you're big fight fans, but I'm a big fight fan. And there's an up-and-coming young fighter by the name of Tyson Pedro, who, like a lot of successful Australian fighters, he's actually got Kiwi blood in him, but we're not going to hold that against him. And he put out he submitted a Saparbek. I can't say his name, I'm butchering it, unfortunately. Safarov in the first round with a crazy Takemura. He flipped him over and locked it up and took out submission of the night. It was an unreal submission, and he's had a bit of a. He started off with a 5-0. I think his first 5 fights. He lost one, and he won one and then lost one, and now he's 7-1. And he's Sydney boy, so only 26 as well, so got a really, really bright future ahead of him, especially in a division like the light heavyweight division that isn't as star-studded as it used to be. It's sort of fallen a little bit behind, obviously, with John Jones dominating for so many years and then Daniel Cormier being up there. So I'd really love to see Tyson Pedro continue his, I guess, ascendance through the division, and hopefully at some point get a shot at a top-ranked guy. Now, let's kick into the first topic of the week, guys. And I want to have a chat to you all about the AFLW. And specifically, Is the AFLW boring? It's a question that's been posed over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, we had the first round. I can see you giggling away there, Big John. It's obviously been a big talking point over at your workplace, but it's been a big talking point. Obviously, the first round of the AFLW kicked off somewhat as a fizzer with the Carlton Collingwood match, and a lot of talk around low scoring and congestion, and I guess what has been seen as the scourge on the men's game over the past sort of 5 or 6 years is sort of seemed to have already in its second season crept into the AFLW. So much to the point that the AFL sent out a memo to the clubs and the coaches, advising them on how to coach. Telling them that they keep their players into zones and don't let the half forwards push up, which is, in my opinion, just absolutely how is that even a thing that's allowed to happen? The governing body turning around telling the clubs how to coach their players. So what do you guys think? Are you a fan of the AFLW? Do you think it's got merit? Do you think the AFL is right in trying to, I guess, stop the rot almost as far as the low scoring and this kind of thing goes? Where do you guys sit on the issue?
Well, I'm going to be honest, I haven't seen a lot of it over the last couple of weeks. That's not because I don't want to watch it and I'm not interested. It's just because there's been other sports that I've been watching, such as the Big Bash finals was on the same weekend as the opening weekend. But obviously it's low scoring, but I guess my opinion is I think we just need to give it a bit more time. It's only in its second season, this competition. I think the AFL's being a bit harsh, to be honest, sending out that memo. We've got to just sort of be patient with this competition. The women, they may not have the skills as the men, and last year was probably low scoring, and you can't expect a dramatic change into just the second season of the competition. That's just my opinion, anyway.
John, where do you sit on this one?
Whether we like it or not, it's here to stay, this competition. So whether we like it, whether we don't like it, whether we think it's low scoring, lack of skills, too much congestion, it's here to stay. I mean, the numbers regarding women's football in the last year or so, over 100,000 girls have joined the game, and there's over 500 senior or women's clubs that have been introduced in the last couple of years. So it's inevitable. It's going to get bigger and bigger. The only main thing I have is whether they are going to expand the competition a bit too early. Obviously, there's going to be 2 new teams next year, so they will take it to 10, and then you take it to 14 the year after. Now, whether there's enough of a talent pool to have all those teams in there, I'm not so sure. The talent at the very top level is high. The problem is there's a lack of depth, I think, across the competition, and that gets found out quite a bit in the games. But this will change, I think, in terms of, once the younger girls come into the competition, there's going to be, and some of the older girls sort of move off towards retirement, courtesy of the better coaching, it's inevitable that the competition's going to improve. And I agree with Jacob. I think we need to give it a little bit more time. Obviously, there's the main thing for me, it's not necessarily the low scoring as such with the AFLW. It's more, I find the congestion's the biggest problem. Because ultimately you can coach the girls to become better skills, more skilled players. That's something you can teach. That's something you can improve. In terms of congestion, it's been ingrained from pretty much 6 or 7 years old when they started playing. What's the object? You got to go for the ball. So everyone's getting drawn to the ball like it's an under 9s, under 10s game. That's why you're getting so much congestion. That's going to be the thing that's going to be hard to coach out of the game, I think. Yeah. Compared to the low scoring as such.
I agree with both of you in the end, and it's very very early in the life of the AFLW for the AFL to be coming in and I get why they're doing it. I get why they're coming in and trying to, I guess, nip this in the butt before it gets worse and worse. In that they've got. They've obviously put a lot of money into the AFLW. They want it to be successful right off the bat. They had success with ratings and participation, all these things you mentioned, John, in the first season. And what they've also got is advertisers and, sponsors and things that they need to, they need to satiate these guys who have put a lot of money into the AFLW as well. And if the ratings aren't there and that, then obviously that's going to be impacting us. So I think it's very knee jerk, especially to send out a memo in the first round. And like, it was just really the one game. Like the Bulldogs game was quite high scoring. The Dogs were free flowing. It was a nice game to watch. And I think you hit on a really good point about the talent pool, in that, like, I obviously you guys being Bulldog supporters, myself being a Bulldog supporter, we've been lucky enough to be involved, or our club being involved in those sort of inaugural games between the Melbourne Footy Club and the Bulldogs, when it was just the best of the best. So it was the best 22 against the best 22 in the country. And those games were I saw a few of them live, and they were of the utmost high quality. They were better than what you would see at a lot of local level football. So if you go down and watch as you would see most weekends, John, an SFL game, some of the games, between the, Melbourne and the Bulldogs and those early women's matches were very exciting, very high scoring, free flowing, long ball movement, no congestion, nothing like that. But what you found is that since they've added the teams and they've diluted the talent pool so significantly, obviously that's going to have an impact on the quality of the game, because the quality of the players and the skills just aren't there. We saw the same thing in the competition with the introduction of GWS and Gold Coast. Like, it's not only the women's competition, the men's have suffered from it as well. We saw a drop in skills, drop in scoring with the introduction of those. You add another 40 players to the talent pool, or 80 players for two teams to the talent pool. It has an impact. There's, participation rates in the men's competition aren't as high as they used to be, and it's getting better, but it's been on a sort of downward curve. And to have two extra teams implemented in, and what's going to happen with the women's team, it's only going to get worse next year. So we're not going to see this, and then obviously the introduction of the more teams the years after, is that we're going to see this get worse before it gets better. But the AFL needs to double down on junior development. They need to double down on putting resources behind coaches and teaching at the junior level. And I guess, like you said, trying to teach the game, like getting the coaches to teach the game the way they want it to be played from a junior level, not going in at the senior level and saying to the coaches, this is how you need to coach, because they're there to win games, right? They're there to sell tickets so people come and watch their teams to win games. Because that's what teams go to. That's what supporters go to watch football for, is to watch their teams win. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I do think they need to give it time. But I think they've jumped the shark a little bit, but with adding the extra teams in so quickly.
Yeah, I think okay, fair enough, maybe two teams next year, but the whole lot of teams, I think North Melbourne is coming in very soon. I'm not sure if that's next year or the year after.
I think that's just
I'm pretty happy
I think they're
about
just bringing the men's team over, so they might try and win some.
Yeah. I'm happy about that, because I think the women's is going to play down here in Tassie, which I'm looking forward to.
Yep.
But still though, 10 teams and then 14 teams the next year, that's a big expansion. And then what it's going to be like the fourth season, we're going to have 14 teams. I would have given it a bit more time before expanding it. And but look, I think it's not all doom and gloom. I've seen some highlights from the Dogs games, and I've been quite happy with some of the skills and so forth. So there is some positives to take out of AFL Women's, that's for sure, and I'm looking forward to watching a bit more over the coming weeks.
Yeah, I agree. I watched the I didn't catch either of the Doggies games, but I watched the Carlton GWS game over the weekend, and that was played in hard conditions. Like, it was wet. It was up in Sydney, so it was wet, humid, and I thought that for what that was and the conditions they played in was a really good game of football. Carlton were doing a lot of attacking. Mind you, the skills obviously are not there, and then even compounded in the wet with a wet football makes it quite hard. There's a lot of talk as well around the fact that they use the size 4 ball, which is the smaller ball, obviously. It's also a lot harder to ball drop and kick, which is again compounded in the wet. So Carlton had a lot of scoring shots but didn't score a lot. But I'll tell you what, the women, they go in hard. They do not shirk a contest, and they there was a few injuries over the weekend, and Taylor Harris took out the GWS captain with in the very last second of the game with a bone crunching tackle, and both nearly killed each other. And so I love the commitment of the girls. I do want it to be a successful sport, because it only means good things for AFL if it can have a viable professional female platform. But the AFL, I think, got greedy with the implementation of the extra teams so quickly when we already saw such a drop in quality and in skills from those, I guess, let's call them all-star games of the previous years between Melbourne and the Bulldogs, to the first season of the AFLW, which was still exciting and still got heaps of crowds and that, because people wanted to come along and see the inaugural season. But the skill level obviously dropped quite a bit because the 8 teams and that kind of thing. So I think they jumped the shark, and it would be I think it's quite hypocritical for them to now turn around and say, well, you need to do this, you need to do that, when it's really their fault that it's sort of in the situation that it's in.
Well, there's an interesting stat, Jack. On the weekend, there was one less goal kicked than last week. So, I mean, there's been this edict to, try and open it up, make it more attacking. And yes, there was wet weather in Sydney for the Carlton GWS game. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, they're still getting the same amount of goals being kicked. I mean, I guess we've got to look over a bigger sample size across the season. Yeah. But I think one of the other key problems that I think some people have mentioned it, others haven't, is clearly the size of the grounds, I think, are too big. You look at Icon Park. I've walked across it for interleague football, and it is one of the biggest grounds you'll ever see. It's just as big, if not bigger, than the MCG. And it's just very hard to get the ball from one end of the ground to the other. So if teams are going to play players behind the ball, it's going to be very hard once you get the ball from the stoppage and think, oh, what am I going to kick to here? All I've got to kick to is opposition players. I think that's one of the major problems of it all. And that's, if you had smaller grounds, I think you'd be able to sort of clear the line with a kick. Then players have to turn around, the play opens up, and then you can all of a sudden see all these other possibilities in front of you. So I think they've got to try and maybe play at a couple more suburban grounds. Like, I get, Whit Noble, great surface, Icon Park, great surface, don't get me wrong. But, I mean, Melbourne, they've basically been the only team that's been able to play good, proper attacking football. The Doggies have done a bit of it. But Melbourne, in their two games at Casey Fields, have been super impressive.
Yeah, the Whit Noville's a hard enough game to play on for the guys. Like, the Barclay Street end of the ground is oftentimes impossible to score at, even for senior men's players. So it's. I mean, I don't know what they expect's going to happen when they've got that breeze blowing across the ground. It's ridiculous. It's an interesting thought, and I haven't heard anyone bring that up before about the smaller grounds. Could definitely make a difference. And this will probably lead us into our next topic. Do you think it might have been worth trialling out AFLX in the women's competition and seeing how that would go with that sort of hybrid game with the smaller grounds and the higher scoring and the super goals and the rest?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. I'm not really sure how to answer that. But just back to that point, like the WBBL do it. They bring in the boundaries and make it shorter for the women. So I actually don't mind that point. I think it's a good idea actually to possibly shorter the ground and make it smaller and it's a nice thought actually.
No, definitely. Yeah, I haven't heard that before. So you might be onto something, John. Send it into AFL House. You heard it here first on Grandstand Gurus. Well, leading into the next topic, this weekend we have the debut of the AFLX, the AFL's hybrid game, the game that they think is going to reach the masses, that the international crowd somehow they're going to bring. I don't know. It's a thing that's happening. It kicks off this weekend at Hindmarsh Stadium. I believe the first game is, which is on. Is it Thursday? Right. This coming Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday. Yeah.
So, what do we all feel about this hybrid game? It's played on so just to give the listeners an idea, the AFLX is a fast fours that they do in the tennis or something like that. It's the 2020 version. It's the shortened version, I guess, hybrid game of the AFL. It's played on a rectangular field between 100 and 120 metres long, between 60 and 70 metres wide. 50 metre arcs are gone. They're now 40 metre arcs. 7 players on the field plus 3 on the bench. No restrictions on rotations. No backward kicks to be paid as marks. Last touch out of bounds. No ball ups after scores, so it's going to be kick-ins from the goal line. They're calling it a Zupa goal, which is 10 points from a goal from outside the 40-metre arc. There's a zone element to it. At least 2 players from each team must start each quarter inside each 40-metre arc. So what do we think of this, guys? It's the AFL's Frankenstein's, monster. It's their attempt to bring AFL to the masses around the world. Will it be successful? Are you excited to see it? Give me your thoughts.
Well, I'm actually excited about it. I'm prepared to give it a go. I think it's probably a good time to play it. We're just coming into the practice matches, and I guess it's something different. I suppose it's not going to take over the AFL original game, but I don't mind the idea of 3 nights, multiple teams playing short matches. I find it exciting, and I'm a Big Bash fan, so I don't know if this compares to the Big Bash. I guess it does a little bit, but I guess the Super Duper goals, that's sort of something that's... I think Super Duper had sponsored the Big Bash for some time, so that's a bit of a similarity. Yep. But look, I'm prepared to give it a go. Whether it's going to be successful or not, I'm not sure, but obviously the AFL implementing this and trying it, and there must be some warrant to it. So I'm prepared to give it a go. I'm actually excited to see how it turns out. And obviously there's a bit of controversy whether there's going to be injuries that come out of it. Let's hope not. But yeah, I'm excited to see what it's like and what it can do.
John, what about yourself?
I'm with Jacob. I think he hit the nail on the head. I think it's going to...
You have to say you like it, though.
I don't, no. Look. I mean, it's more the fact we just don't know about football, but AFL football,
that's right.
An oval ball being played on a square field, and it's going to be interesting to see how they actually how they play. 2, how they commentate. I mean, are they going to call the ball near the left-hand corner flag? He's going to have to center the kick into the goal square. Oh, they go up for a mark, as if like there's a goalkeeper there. I mean, it's going to be very interesting, I reckon, just to hear how they call it for a start. I mean, like, as a commentator myself, I mean, I'd certainly probably would have wanted to, at least call a practice match before I go in and call the game. Yeah.
Well, I think they came out today and said that Brian Taylor and James Brayshaw's commentating it, so that would be interesting.
But I mean, I don't know what necessarily to expect. I'm sort of expecting a bit like basketball, back and forth, and a bit of Gaelic football where you start from the end of the ground. The main thing for me, I mean, obviously the injuries is probably the key worry for the clubs, and you're sort of seeing with some of the teams. West Coast named, I think, 4 players who played more than 10 senior games. But some other clubs like Port Adelaide named Robbie Gray, St Kilda have named a strong team. Fremantle named Nat Fyfe, but I don't think we ever expected him to play. Yeah. There's a grand final at each tournament, but there's no prize money. And I reckon unless they get prize money in for these tournaments, I think that's when clubs and players might want to be a part of it and say, okay, I'm going to take this seriously. There's a carrot on the line here. Why don't we give it a crack? I can understand the first year why they wouldn't do it, but
yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Look, I'm fully on board with it. I played up a little bit, but I'm excited for this. There's a lot of... I don't understand really the naysayers behind it. The people are saying, "Oh, it's ridiculous. Why are they doing it? It's stupid. It's this, that, and the other." It's like it's footy, but it's different. Like, it's just more footy as far as I'm concerned. It puts a fresh spin on it. We're going to get to see a completely... Like, this is a completely new sport. Like, this isn't, JLT with the funky rules. This isn't Gaelic. This is a completely new sport, and it excites me. It's something different. The AFL trying things different, and I've always said that if the AFL, if it was less convoluted and it was actually distributed correctly to the masses, it would be a widely popular sport in other countries. And for people to say, "Oh, why are the AFL bothering?" Why are they interested in, in bloody, expanding the game overseas, they should be focusing on it here. It's like, well, all that's going to do is bring in more dollars. The players are going to get paid more. They're going to be able to spend more on the spectacle of the game. You're going to go and you're going to have proper entertainment when you go and watch the game. So rather than us going and, as a Bulldogs fan, we go along to a game and we get to watch the bloody, what do they call them? The pound or we get Woofer and bloody Barkley and the crew dancing around at halftime to who let the dogs out. We might actually get some decent entertainment and some interesting things at games and some good experiences. So, I'm all for it. I can't see, the injuries thing. They could get injured, like, JLT. They can get injured. I mean, they could get injured.
Yeah, well, that's
exactly right. Yeah, I mean,
that's the point. Yeah,
we lost Libba like 2 years ago. In the first game of the preseason. So I don't see how it's any different to that. It's like, do you not play your players in preseason? It's a good way for them to get a bit of fitness. It's supposed to be fast ball movement. I'm super excited for it. I'm in how they call it. Again, like you said, John, is going to be really interesting. The Silver Sharon is another thing. The Zupa goals and all the rest. The only criticism I can level on this is why the AFL have launched a competing product to the AFLW. That's the only thing that I'm like, that gets me on this, is that, they've put all of this into the AFLW. They've had this amazing first season, all this buy-in, and they've had round 1, round 2, and now they're putting a competing product up against this, I guess this new league that's already fighting. The team in its first week, it's basically its 9th round ever, is already seemingly fighting for its legitimacy and its survival, and they're launching a competitive product that they own directly up against it. That's the only thing that sort of makes me go, meh.
It's an interesting point to make, yeah.
I think that there's some potential. I mean, it might be difficult in terms of how to, put the pitch together and, getting rid of the lines and stuff, but it wouldn't surprise me if one day they try and combine the sort of AFLX and AFLW, maybe have AFLX as curtain raisers to AFLW, because you're right, Jack, in terms of interfering on the AFLW space. Daniel Harford, who's assistant coach at Collingwood, he came out today and basically said exactly what you said, that the girls' time's now basically being taken over by this AFLX tournament, and everyone's going to be wanting to watch that. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, all the AFLW games are live on Foxtel, but now that the men's stuff is back, I mean, people have sort of been missing out on that for 6 months. And even if it's the AFLX, I mean, if the AFL players were playing marbles or tiddlywinks, people would still want to watch it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good point. It's a good point. I think they would. I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Well, I never actually thought of it like that. Actually, with the AFL women's, I guess there's no Thursday or Friday night match, is there? It's just the Saturday match. So I suppose
AFLX.
I'm not sure how. AFLX clashing with AFL women's. I think there's only the Saturday match. I'm not sure of the times on Saturday. But
yeah, maybe.
Like, just like not excluding the AFL women's, but just not thinking about the AFL women's for a moment. I do believe that, in a way, it's sort of a good timing, because, we're just about to get into, practice matches, and for me, now that the NAB Cup is not a thing anymore, the pre-season is sort of one of those things where you just want to hurry up and get it over with, because it's just practice matches.
Yep.
You just want to get into the season.
Yep.
And, the practice matches, they may mean a bit, obviously, for fitness and seeing your players and seeing young ones and stuff. But I think to have something like this in the pre-season, I think is exciting. It brings some excitement to the pre-season. Yep. And, I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. It's going to be fascinating. I know there's a lot of people. There's a few people who are against it, which is, I guess, disappointing in a way. I know there's some people that have come out and said that the money could be well better spent on other things, such as regional football and footy down here in Tassie,
which has been a massive talking point over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, especially up the northwest. Yeah, but putting that aside, I'm in support of it. I think I'm excited for it. It's footy.
Yeah. It's hard to complain, isn't it? We're getting a nice dose of footy so early in the year.
Yeah.
And something different. Like, it's just changing it up a little bit.
Who wouldn't want multiple clubs playing on the same night? I think that's kind of cool, to be honest. You get small little matches. I think tickets are pretty cheap, to be honest. I think under 12s get in for free.
$15, something like that, to get in. Yeah.
Yeah, for those who get to go, I think fantastic.
It's I'm excited for it. It's a there's been a lot of talk about how does this evolve, and does it then become, obviously all the clubs are fielding their own teams now, but do they then privatise an AFLX league, and that in the off season, they can have it sort of like in a situation like the IPL where they can lease, Patrick Dangerfield from Geelong, the Packers or whatever, Packer has his own team, and he buys, Bontempelli, and he buys, Dangerfield, and he buys Robbie Gray, and they're all playing together on the one field.
That'd be massive.
And he's, Dangerfield and Selwood are playing against each other in a game with Craig Hutchison's Crocodiles are playing against, the Packers, So it's, there's a lot of potential here for it to be something. And you got to remember, everyone thought that 2020 cricket was a crock when it first got announced. Everyone thought, what is this sideshow? 20 overs. And now it's bigger than, it's bigger than all the other forms of cricket.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. Yeah. It's attended by people who don't even follow cricket, to be honest. So, look at how big that's become. I guess, if AFLX was going to be a similar experience to the Big Bash, I reckon there'd be people who'd get along that don't even watch footy on a regular basis. So yeah.
I think one thing it's shown, guys, is since Steve Hocking's come in as the AFL GM, he hasn't been afraid to make really gutsy, ballsy decisions about AFLX, AFLW, bring out the memo, whether we like it or not. I mean, he's been with us a number of times, and he said, I'm a forward thinker. I'm here to innovate, and I'm here to do my job. So I'm pretty sure that with it, there's certainly not going to be a lack of trying on the AFL's part to try and get any of these initiatives, and even during the season as well. I mean, we've got the runners thing being trialled in the JLT. Wouldn't surprise me if that comes in during the season. I think it's inevitable that interchange is going to be reduced as well. So I think even though the players don't like the changes, I think there's no doubt that the change is going to be inevitable, and particularly to make things quicker. No doubt about that.
Yeah, it's funny. I've always been of the opinion that they need to, they should make interchanges uncapped. I don't buy. I know there's a lot of research around it, but I really think that speed the game up, let the players be as fresh as possible. And I know they talk a lot about having to get to contests and that kind of thing, but I've always been of the opinion that it's going to work in a different way. Is that players are going to be so tired that they have to have congestion and they have to have repeat ball ups, and that if they're as fresh as they can be, they can move quicker to each contest and spread the length of the ground. And if you think about I guess when AFL was probably at its peak was probably around that 2008 through 2011 period, where the game was in a really good shape. It was fast paced, it was high scoring, it was very exciting, and it's sort of tapered off over the last few years, and the congestion has become sort of a thing. And we had the introduction of the sub rule, and then we had that abomination, and now with the interchange rotation. So I've always been of the opposite I guess, opinion of that, but with the interchange rule. But I guess that's a separate tangent. But I agree with you about Hocking. He's doing some different things, and he's making ballsy decisions. And we're in a post Demetrio world now, when you've got Gill at the top, and we've got Hocking in now. So it's exciting times for the AFL. Things are only going to get better. There's talk now of the mid-season draft becoming a thing. Obviously, Damien Hardwick coming out and sort of talking really strongly. Obviously, Ben Griffiths has taken up an opportunity to go over to the States and play college football, which is obviously a great opportunity for him, but that's disadvantaged Richmond now for the entire season. So there's talk of mid-season drafts and mid-season trading and things like that, which...
That'd be big. That'd be big if there was a mid-season draft. I don't know if you two follow English football in general, soccer, the world game in general across the world, where they have the January transfer window. That's a big time for that for that code. So to have a mid-season draft, that'd be quite big.
Yeah, absolutely.
And who knows? You could get some massive deals, and it'd be pretty massive. I reckon. Pretty massive.
I
agree.
I think it's inevitable to happen. The interesting thing is whether they'll have a draft or whether they have a trade period. So whether you can trade players between clubs, or whether you can get the best player out of the Waffle or the Sandful or the VFL or the NTFL, one of those competitions, to come in and play. I think that might be the interesting because it might be quite difficult to get players, you know, switching between clubs. And I mean, as Jacob said about soccer, I mean, you could also have the loan system where, you know, player goes to this club B for the final 10 games of the year, and then comes back the next year and dominates. We see that all the time.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of a mid-season trade period as such, just because I'm a very traditionalist when it comes to football. I like my players to be one club players. I don't like it breaks my heart when a player leaves my club and they're dead to me, but, you know, and all that. But, so I'm more of a fan of the draft. So like bring the best player from the VFL. There's a guy tearing up the VFL, bring him in. There's a guy tearing up the waffle, bring him in, etc. and so on. But that also poses its challenges in that generally there's not many, if any, second tier players who are full-time second tier players. So that also then means that you're going to bring a guy in and ask him to quit his job that he does full time to come and commit 100% to playing AFL, and whether or not they're going to be able to do that mid-season is, it creates, it needs to be thought out a little bit more than, the AFL is very good at knee-jerk reactions, right? And I think if they're going to do something like this, they need to think it out a little bit more, and you have to have, like, you can't just have a mid-season draft and pick anyone out. Like, players, if they want to be eligible for a mid-season draft, they have to nominate for it, or there has to be some sort of kind of system in there to make it, viable, because otherwise it's just not going to work if they just go mid-season draft and it's there, and it's like, okay, but what does it mean? And all of a sudden it's the AFLW situation all over again, and it's the concussion rule, and it's the tackle rule, and it's the bump, and it's all the things that they change every time there's a thing. Every time something happens in the AFL, they change a rule. It's like, just let it be for like 5 seconds. You don't need to change it every time there's something. So
I agree, definitely. Yeah.
I think they need to, if they're going to make a significant change like a mid-season draft or a mid-season trade period, there needs to be proper parameters put into place for it.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, it's got to be well thought out, and yeah, you're spot on, really, I think.
Yeah. Now, moving along, gents, I guess the reason we are all here, everyone's been waiting for, let's talk doggies. Let's just indulge ourselves for a little bit. Let's talk about our favourite team. How are we all feeling leading into, obviously 2016 was euphoric for all of us. It was everything we've all always dreamed of. It was the fairy tale, beloved Bulldogs finally got there on the last day, or the first day in October, and they got it done. 2017, not so great. Things didn't go quite to plan. Stuff started falling apart from the inside. Everyone got a little bit upset with each other. See you later, Jake Stringer. Say hello, Josh Shackey. And now we're here, 2018. So how are we all feeling? First of all, how did 2017 make you feel? Anyone who's listened to this show for a while knows how it made me feel, because I never shut up about it. But how are you guys feeling coming off 2017 and coming into 2018?
Yeah, well, 2017, disappointing, of course, but especially after the year we had 2016, just thought it would, I guess we would build on it. But I guess last year, didn't come back into shape, I suppose, after that premiership. And I guess you had players who probably performed the year before, didn't quite perform last year. And to our forward line, there was a few issues, I think, up in defence as well at times. But I think coming into 2018, I think we've had a good off-season in terms of the recruits and the draftees. I think there's been some great recruits. I think Jackson Trengrove is a real good fit, very versatile, he can play 3 positions.
Yeah.
And Shackey, pick 2 in the draft a couple of years ago. I think he's a great pickup. And then, we've got Tom Boyd to come back, and even Jack Redpath, who can play well as well. And so I think I'd be very surprised if our forward line was the same as last year. I'd actually be expecting us to get some score out of all those inside 50s that we got last year. Too many inside 50. That was probably the killer, I thought, last year, is that we just
bomb it long.
We got so many balls inside 50, but we just weren't able to
convert.
Capitalise on those inside 50.
Yeah.
So I think this year, though, with the recruits we've made, I think we can put together a functional forward line, and I'm quite confident. I'm quite hopeful that we can crack that top 8 again this year.
Yeah. John?
I'm optimistic, but I don't necessarily hold the same amount of optimism. There's a lot of sort of, I guess, a bit of the unknown. I mean, we got Josh Shaggy, who, on his day, I mean, he was the highest, just about the highest rated junior going around. Beautiful kick for goal. He's obviously had his issues at Brisbane, and I guess we're sort of hoping that he's going to come in and, you know, now that he's back in Victoria and he's going to do very well. And obviously Tom Boyd missed a lot of last year, well documented. But I mean, those guys are only young, so we've got to give them a chance, sure. But I mean, it's going to be a tough task to expect these guys to just come straight back in. And don't forget, Shaki barely played any football last year. He played in the NEAFL the whole year. It's going to be a tough task to get them to come in and expect them to, you know, kick their 30, 40 goals. Tory Dixon was down last year. I mean, in the premiership season, he would have kicked, you know, 30, 40 goals. Key player in the side. I'd argue he's probably not even in the best 22 for next year. I heard this discussion with a couple of my work colleagues about the Bulldogs side. And we had a few interesting names thrown around in various places about who might not be in the team, who should be in the team. And in the end, I'm not sure if Tory Dixon's in a best 22. His tackling pressure, I don't think, was the same. He didn't have a pre-season, so he was pretty much out of form for most of the year. So, as Jacob said, I think we're going to have to change the forward line, how we move the ball in there. It's going to be a different dynamic. No Jake Stringer, obviously, you know, a little bit of explosiveness getting towards the ball, and his work one-on-one. So that's going to be different. But I think it basically comes down to the work in the centre of the ground. I think we got pretty much smashed there all year. To be honest, we didn't win the ball. Geordie Roughhead, he was outstanding in the premiership year. He didn't have a bad year, but he didn't have a great year. And I think we lost the hit-outs. We lost the clearances in almost every game. Contested ball, we got hammered. Bontempelli won the best and fairest, which is a pretty good effort considering it was probably a pretty down year for him. And we just didn't give him enough support around the ball. I mean, Jack McRae was good, but, you know, your likes of Hunter, he was down a bit. Caleb Daniel, maybe some clubs figured him out a little bit more. There just wasn't that enough support for Bonts in the middle of the ground, and then we had to put him forward because we couldn't kick any goals.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it was a disappointing year. It was a weird year for me. It took me about 10 rounds to actually start caring that we were losing games. You know, I remember when we lost against Fremantle over there, when they were, you know, it was all doom and gloom for Freo. We went over there and we got beaten, and I was sort of like, yeah, premiership jumper on my wall. I don't really care. And then, you know, we lost another one, and I'm like, yeah, it's fine. And then about round 10, I started getting a little bit angry, and I go, what's going on here? And obviously I think when the loss against Melbourne was, I think, for me the point where I was like, okay, now there's something going on. And for me, it was just, I mean, it was as simple as the hunger wasn't there. And of all of the cliches that they threw out in the preseason last year about how we're not going to have a premiership hangover, we're not being complacent, we're not this, we're not that, we're the hunted and the hunters and this, that and the other, it was evident that that's what it was, is that you're right, almost every player on that list had a down year, bar, you know, a select half a dozen. You know, Liam Pickin wasn't the same player that he was. Like, he was nothing compared to what he was in 2016. He was one of the best players he had one of the best final series you could ever imagine, and he was nothing. He had probably two games to that standard last year, and they were both very early in the year. Like I said, Tory Dixon was completely off the boil. Didn't have a preseason. Jake Stringer was, you know, was Jake Stringer of the past 2.5 seasons. Like, he almost just about replicated his 2016 season, which everyone has to remember was not very good either. I thought players that could hold their head high last year were Jack McRae. I thought he was, you know, phenomenal last year. I honestly thought he should have won our best and fairest. I thought he was dreadfully unlucky. I think he's a bit, he's probably not as damaging with his ball use as what Bontempelli can be, and Bontempelli's a, you know, quality over quantity. Jack McRae was just consistent all the way through the year. I thought he was fantastic. Obviously, Toby McLean had a career best year. Bailey Dale came through really well towards the end of the season, but there was just too many players that were down. Obviously, Matthew Boyd, you know, dropped off pretty badly after an All-Australian year and a premiership year. Couldn't break into the side. You know, Bob was in and out with injury, and, you know, like you said, Roughhead was down. It was just an all-round down performance. Jason Johannesson had that horrible patch during the year where he was just getting pummeled every week and couldn't get near the ball, and his teammates weren't backing him up, and they were sort of expecting him to do it on his own, and there was a myriad of issues, right? Injuries also played a part. We had a lot of players, we had a heap of injuries through the year. Guys going down early, guys going down mid-season. We weren't able to get any continuity through the team. We had that issue in 2016. But the difference between 16 and 17 is that we didn't have that hunger in 17. And we had that hunger. A soldier would go down in 2016. You lose Bob, and you lose JJ, and then you lose Libber and Jack McRae, and then you lose Easton Wood, and then Roughhead goes out, and then String gets dropped. And every time Mitch Wallace and Jack Redpath go down, every time a soldier went down, it seemed to strengthen the group. Whereas that passion, that hunger wasn't there last year. It was evident, and it was evident in the middle of the ground as we get smashed around the ball every game. There was no intent to win the hard ball where they would die for that ball in 2016, and they would die for each other. And I don't think it was there last year. There seemed to be, as much as people can come out and say there was, there's no infighting and this, that, and the other. And I don't think it was dramatic as some people made it out to be, but there was clearly issues. Like, there was clearly things that were happening behind the scenes that people weren't happy with, that were upsetting to some people. There's been a lot of talk around treatment of some players, and that being the reason some players have been moved on, with bullying and stuff like that. I don't want to sort of indulge the rumours too much, but I'm sure we've all heard whispers of those. But yeah, I'm quietly optimistic. I like that 2018 we have a healthy list, that we don't have that gaping hole of that star player who's going to miss the first 10 weeks. We've got some really solid recruits, in Trengove, in Josh Shackey, the fellow who's come over from Fremantle.
Kruse. I think he might be fantastic. I don't know. I think there's been some people that might label him as the Stringer replacement. I'm not too sure, but he seems like he could come in and I think he can play forward and back pockets. If I'm correct.
I think he'll play on the wing. I think he'll play on the wing, guys.
I think so.
Wing.
Okay. He'll be a high half forward wingman. There's talk he can play off half back as well. I don't think he's going to be he's a different size to Stringer. He's a bit smaller. He doesn't have that bust packs open, but he can take a mark, which is something that I think we really struggled with, was contested marking. Yeah. Obviously,
that was a killer for me. I think you have to be able to. I still feel like we need. I still feel like a team needs key forwards, and they need to be the ones, or our forwards need to be the ones to mark. I know that the game's probably evolving these days, where it's a bit more moving and of the ball, but I still feel like you need to be able to take a mark inside 50 and like also at times as well when we did mark it, we were quite poor in front of the goals as well. So
we lost a few games just from poor kick. Like the GWS game, we should have won.
More behinds and goals, I think, was a big factor as well.
I think it was second worst last year.
Not going to win your games at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it was second worst or something last year with goal scoring.
I think also the key defensive posts for me is going to be interesting because as I said, I spoke with a couple of workmates about this, and originally one of them didn't have Marcus Adams and Dale Morris potentially in the best 22 players. Now I reckon Marcus Adams is nearly just about the most important player at the Bulldogs. Not in terms of his big size down back. I mean, Cordy's a good player, but he's more your sort of third defender. Moz is obviously getting on a bit. He's been a fine warrior and great servant for the club, but this is probably going to be his last year. Obviously, you've got Trengove, who I think will probably play centre-half back. But Adams has had a very injury-ravaged last couple of years, and when he's been in the team, he's done a very good job. So I think he'll be critical down back for us, I think.
Yeah, I thought he was the one that we missed last year personally. But obviously the likes of Lewis Young came in, and I thought he was pretty good when he came in. He showed some signs, but I thought we missed Marcus Adams last year. That was a bit of a shame that he didn't get to play a lot of the year last year.
No, I agree. I think the key defense. I mean, you look at the sort of across it. We've got issues across the ground, right? I think our midfield, if it can get right, and if we can get Tim English into the team, I guess playing senior football at some point this year, if he can, get some size about him and get his body right, I guess, to come in, play some senior football. I think that sort of takes I guess it moves our midfield into a point where we are able to get back to that competitiveness, because we really struggled last year with, I guess, the abolishment of the third man up. That really hurt us. We were smashed in contested ball, but we weren't able to get first touch from the third man up.
And even that, the combination of Jordan Roughhead and Tom Boyd rucking, that obviously wasn't there last year because of Tom Boyd. So that, I reckon, that hurt us a little bit. That was sort of our, I guess, our key part of our 2016 premiership was Roughhead and Boyd sort of being those two that would ruck for us. I wasn't quite enthusiastic about it because I felt like Boyd needed to spend more time up forward and less time rucking, but it worked, and it was definitely missed last year.
Most definitely.
Jack, you probably watch a bit more VFL footy than I do. How far away do you reckon Tim English is from being a senior prospect, and who are probably some of the other guys for the Bulldogs fans we should be looking out for?
Yeah, I think Tim English is probably another preseason away from being a first picked AFL ruckman. Having said that, he's a magnificent ruckman at his craft. His tap work is as good as anyone, especially even if you're just talking VFL level, his tap work is as good as anyone. He's agile and he's quick. He's got great ball skills. His hand to foot, his ball drop is magnificent for a big man. I think his body, just because he's quite that really skinny, gangly kind of ruckman, he's probably another preseason away from just getting the right definition. I just hope they don't do to him what they did to Ace Cordy, where Ace Cordy was a very, very similar. If you remember when he was drafted, he was, a strong breeze would blow him over. But he was picked so early in the draft because he had such great athleticism for such a big man. He had really good skills and he could jump and run and he was quick. And the mistake that they made with Ace Cordy was they made him put on 20 kilos in his first, preseason and a half. His body just broke down. It took him 4 or 5 seasons before he could even play a game because his shoulders would just keep breaking down, then his calves would go, and then the saga of Ace Cordy was, does he even exist for the first 5 seasons of his career? He couldn't get on the park because his body just couldn't handle it because they bulked him up so much. So I hope they don't go down that path and try and rush Tim English into the team. Because Ace Cordy Ben Hudson was coming towards the end of his career. We need to, they didn't feel Minson was quite up to it. We need to rush Cordy into being that first ruckman, and they sort of almost just ruined him. So I think another preseason for Tim English. I think I've been really disappointed with the development of Kieran Collins, a guy who was picked right behind Josh Dunkley in that draft year. He's played one senior game. He just hasn't come on. There's a lot of hype. He was the second best defender behind his TSC Cup year behind playing first pick, number 1 draft pick for Carlton. Wiedering. He was second best backman in the competition behind Wiedering. But I think there was a bit of Wiedering was taking the best forward every week because they were playing in the same team. Wiedering was taking the best forward every week, and Collins was getting second best forward and was, on par stat-wise, but that might have been a sort of a statistical anomaly almost because he had Wiedering who was so good right next to him. Lewis Young is probably one to watch. His skills need a lot of work, but he's got a lot of potential. I really like the development of Ace Cordy. Zane Cordy. I thought he was one that was really good last year. He's one I think that can take another step up, and he just showed a lot last year with his second efforts and that kind of thing. As far as the other young kids, like Lipinski was really good in the VFL last year. I think he's one who could be playing, almost like first round this year if his preseason continues the way it has. There's a lot of really good kids there. The thing that worries me is there's a few that have got suspect ball use, which I'm always a bit sketchy on picking players who can't kick, or who can kick not very well. Some have worked out over the years. Obviously, Clay Smith is the one that comes to mind, who has probably the most horrendous ball drop of any player I've ever seen, but has come on really well. Josh Dunkley is very similar. He's come on really well. Michael Talia was one who obviously was moved on from the club for other reasons, but his ball drop was horrendous, and he just couldn't get any continuity in his football. But then we pick players like Christian Howard, who was picked purely for his ball use and was never able to obviously make it at the top level. So, I think there's enough there, but we've got issues all over the ground. Backline, probably definitely the biggest.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that Trent Grove will not be sort of that key answer, but he will provide that sort of that defensive improvement that we need in that department. It's interesting to say about Kieran Collins though, because I thought a couple of times, only looking at his sort of stats and well, not stats, but like his height, I thought that we probably could have used him last year. But it's interesting you say about his development and how you've been disappointed about that. That is a bit disappointing actually, because he sort of fits the bill in a way with his size to be up in defence. But if what you're saying is correct, then that's disappointing. I would have thought. Yeah,
he just hasn't come on, and they always say the big guys take a while to come on, but perhaps the swing, swing him forward, and that could be. I think what's hurt him is that we haven't had the flexibility to be able to try him in different positions, because we've really needed, obviously with Marcus Adams being out with a significant amount of injury, it's been hard to be able to put Kieran in different positions, because he's been needed down back, and he's been quite lucky and he hasn't had a lot of injuries. He just hasn't done enough to warrant senior football. Yeah,
fair enough.
So what do we all? I've got to ask the question before we wrap this up. How did we all feel about the Jake Stringer situation? Because it was a long running saga on this show through last year. It was spoken about almost every week. How do we all feel about Jake being moved on by the club? Don't all jump in at once.
Look, I'm a bit mixed with it really. My dad's a Bulldog supporter as well, and we've discussed this at various times. And I guess if he has really been a disruption at the club, and all the rumours are true, then I guess it was probably right to move him on. Obviously, I guess you've got to also look at it, the fact that he, the last 2 years haven't been great for him. Even 2016, as you said earlier, Jack, wasn't really that great. So I don't know. Maybe he needed a change of club. Maybe. I guess in this situation, you've got to trust the club that they have made the right decision. And from all reports, he seems to be enjoying Essendon. I think they're planning to play him in midfield, which is probably something we probably couldn't do, because we do have a lot of sort of midfielders. Mm-hmm. But I guess I'm just trusting the club and that they've made the right decision. And
I think it just became untenable in the end. I mean, you look at 2016 in the Premiership year. I mean, he got dropped to the VFL 2 weeks before the finals, and they brought him back for the final. He played a good game against West Coast, and then I think he kicked a couple of good goals against Hawthorn. And I mean, he kicked that very important goal in the grand final in the last quarter, but he was pretty much anonymous in that game. And then
he had a poor game for sure.
And then you look at sort of the pre-season. I think there was not just him. I think there was a few other guys that came back not in the right shape. And I think that put them behind the 8 ball. And I mean, there's obviously the Johannesson around that time. About the same time, there was the contract stuff with him. There was talk about Liver. There was talk about Stringer, and then Bevo's dropped him again to the VFL. I mean, Jack McRae got dropped to the VFL once, but he hasn't gone back to the VFL. He's been very good. And I reckon there's just the alarm bells are ringing from a long way out, I think. And, I think he's going to be a very good player for Essendon. I think he's going to turn into probably the player that we hoped he would become for us. I mean, that tends to happen when you go to another club and you see it through fresh eyes. You get a fresh opportunity. And, I mean, it's obviously a divisive one because a lot of the fans wanted him to stay. They love him. But I just think for the club, I think it's probably the right call that Bevo made. I think the only thing you probably would have wanted to do differently in the club's perspective is not come out so far ahead of the trade period and say, right, this is what we're doing, we're trading him. Because that, in the end, it decreased his value. Because people, Essendon and other clubs are going to say, right, you don't want him. I mean, there's no way he's coming back. I mean, how many times has it happened that, a player's demanded to be traded and hasn't gone through? It would have only been Nick Stevens probably at Port Adelaide.
The year before.
But Bryce,
he obviously got his wish. Year, but...
I mean, in the end, I think the club kind of backed themselves into a corner that in the end they just decided this is the best we're going to get for him. And I guess proof will be in the pudding. I mean, I think the club, to be fair, after what looked like a complete disaster, to be able to get a former number 2 pick in Shaki, yes, he's had his issues, and we don't know whether he can make it as a senior footballer, but at least they've given themselves the best opportunity possible to try and at least make something positive out of it.
I remember, I'll never forget that trade period. The whole situation with Jake is it was heartbreaking to me. He was my favourite player. Just the the untapped potential of a guy like that. I followed him even through his junior career. I remember when he broke his leg, and then because he was coming up through the under-16s, and there was talk about this guy could be number 1 draft pick. When he broke his leg, and then all of that, and then obviously I remember that when we picked him up in the draft, I was so excited. And his first touch, I'll never forget, in that NAB Cup game against Hawthorn. He kicked an amazing goal around his body. So I was always such a big fan of his, and for the way it sort of unfolded. But I sort of went in. My opinion of it by the end was that if Bevo didn't think this guy was a right fit for this club, then he's not a right fit for the club. This is a guy who's been able to do what he did in 2 years and take our club to a premiership that we weren't able to do in 60 years. I'm fairly certain I can cop whatever he sort of comes up with. Do you know what I mean? If that's the situation, I'll back him. I'm going to back Bevo, to the hilt as far as that kind of thing goes. I mean, it's disappointing and it's frustrating, but I think if they're going to do something like that, there had to be legitimate reasons for it. As far as Jake goes, I hope he never plays a game of senior football again. But that's just me being super biased and bleeding red, white, and blue. But I'll never forget that trade period, and I'll never forget where I was driving in my car and listening to it, and it coming down to the wire and looking like the deal's not going to happen, and is it going to happen? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? And when what did we get for him? We got pick 20 and 22 and 40 or something like that for him, 20 and 40 or something ridiculous like that. And then we traded, pick 15. I can't remember now, but
it was a big trade period nonetheless.
Yeah, it was massive.
Yeah, it was massive.
But then within the space of 20 minutes for me being punching my steering wheel, we got reamed. We've done it again. We've just ruined it. How did we go from pick 10 for this guy to pick 20 and 40 or whatever? It's just and then we end up trading pick 40 and something else for Josh Shaki within the space of about 20 minutes was quite good. So I was I'm happy with basically we got, I think, pick 15 and Josh Shaki for Jake Stringer or something along those lines was how it sort of played out in the end. So I think it'll hopefully work out in our favour as the life plays out. And I've seen some pictures of Jake recently. Doesn't look in great shape. So hopefully that trend continues. Because I hate the Bombers with a passion. Oh, very good. All right, guys. Moving along. Legend of the Week time. This is the segment where we pick an outstanding performance from the week of sport, whether it be an individual piece of brilliance, a show of sportsmanship, or a great team effort. So, guys, I'll start with you. Bev? Jacob? Who you got?
Yep. My legend of the week, it's going to come from the Allan Border medal last night. Of course, a big cricket award. Could have gone Steve Smith, but I'm actually going to go Ricky Ponting. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame last night. Of course, being a Tasmanian, he's Tasmanian, and he played some great years of cricket, and of course captained Australia for a long period of time. He was what's the word? He was definitely well deserved to get inducted last night, great achievement for him. Started his early cricket career here in Tassie, and to move on to the national team like he did, and have the career he did. I think he won a couple of World Cups. I think, absolutely legendary stuff. So that's my legend of the week, Ricky Ponting. He knows the game so well as well, which is
magnificent player.
Which is fantastic. So that's my legend of the week. Ricky Ponting inducted into the Hall of Fame last night at the Allen Border Medal.
Fair choice, I'd say. Big John, what about you?
I had a couple of honourable mentions just very quickly. Peter Hanscom, 112, I think it was, for Victoria, back in form, which is good for the Aussies ahead of the tour to South Africa. And one for the UFC, Jack. I saw this on the weekend on the TV highlights, but then I did a little bit of research, and this is probably why he didn't quite win it, but Yoel Romero with his KO, that was one of the most savage beatings I've seen.
He nearly decapitated Luke
But then I found out that
off.
he didn't make the weight for the title, so I don't think he could give him I don't think he could give him the Legend of the Week. But that was one of the biggest knockouts I'm no boxing UFC fan, but that was frightening stuff to watch. To be honest,
took his head off.
But this is Jacob might find this one interesting. Mine is Harry Kane from Tottenham Hotspur. Now, he scored the winner in the North London Derby against Arsenal on the weekend. And some interesting stats for you from Harry Kane. He scored 20 goals every year in the last 4 EPL seasons. The only player who's done that in recent times is Sergio Aguero. He scored 101 goals in 142 games in the Premier League. He scored in 7 of the last 8 North London derbies. And the rivalry between Arsenal and Tottenham is just out of this world in terms of the hatred for each other. But what makes it, I find it very interesting, was that Harry Kane was released as an eight-year-old, I believe, by Arsenal. He did his little junior days at Arsenal, and it came out in the media overnight from the former Arsenal Academy director, Liam Brady, that they released him because he was apparently chubby and unathletic.
Oh, that's stunning. That is stunning. I did not know that. That is, I'm flabbergasted by that. I'm not an Arsenal fan, but that is, geez, I wonder what they'd be thinking right now. Oh, he's become one of the best. What he's been able to do.
I mean, you talk about Messi, Ronaldo, Neymar. I mean, Harry Kane, the way he's going at the moment, he's in the top 3 players in the world now. And I mean, he might not make the top 3 for the Ballon d'Or because they normally basically put the same players in every year. And maybe he doesn't quite have the profile because he doesn't play for necessarily as big a club as these other stars. But it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, Real Madrid, they desperately want him in the transfer window, and they'll have to offer £250 million to get him. Minimum.
Yeah. No doubt.
So he's my legend for the weekend.
Just out of curiosity, who do we support in the EPL? By the way,
Here you go, John.
I'm not an EPL. Well, I'm an EPL guy, but my team's not in the EPL. Leeds United. We've been battling for a number of years now in the second tier, and had more manager changes than you could poke a stick at, really. I think it's been 14 in the last 6 or 7 years.
Oh, very good. If I had to pick a team, it'd be Chelsea, only because that's the team I picked.
That's my team.
That's the team I picked when I play FIFA. Yeah.
Out of form lately though. Like they won this morning, but geez, they lost last week to who did they lose last week to? I can't remember, but I think it was Watford. Watford and Bournemouth. That's it. That's the one. 4-1 it was last week. So bounced back this morning, but they've been a bit out of form. Anyway, on to you, Jack.
My legend of the week, and it's sort of a legend, I guess, from the last week and a half because it's happened 10 odd days ago. But Glenn Maxwell, he's been I mean, he's copped the wrath of being a Victorian, like many have done over the years. He's unfortunately born in the wrong state, and so he's been shunned by the Cricket Australia selectors. You know, he's the leading run scorer at Sheffield Shield and did everything right in the BBL and couldn't get a game in the Test match, couldn't get a game in the one-day series. Comes out in the 2020s, picked first in the 2020s, and what do you know? We win. We haven't lost a match in the series. So he's been absolutely fantastic. Capped it off with an amazing 100 against England in that second match. Took 3 for, I think, in the first innings with the ball. Made 100, hit 6 off the last ball to bring up the win and make the 100. This is a guy with immense talent, you know, who started his career in a way that you know, was rightfully criticised in the way that he played his cricket, you know, trying to play the big shots and the reverse sweeps and you know, the switch hits and this, that and the other. But he's turned himself into an exceptional batsman who's patient, who plays the right shots, who is watchful and contemplative in the way that he plays his cricket, who can also bowl, you know, very handy, you know, part-timers. And I've felt for him so bad this summer. Obviously been overlooked in the test matches when I thought he could have very easily been picked, and obviously the Australian selectors were they were, you know, justified in their picking of of Shaun Marsh. He delivered, and then obviously Mitch Marsh delivered. So, you know, not much you can say there. He was unlucky, I think, to not be selected, Maxwell. But at the one day, I can't for the life of me understand why he wasn't picked in the one day team. He was in magnificent form in the BBL. He's doing everything right. This crap around the way he trains, it just sounds like, you know, sounds ridiculous to me. And to his credit, he copped it on the chin. He didn't complain. He didn't, you know, crack it. He took it in his stride. And he's come in and he's made, you know, an amazing amount of runs for Australia in these T20 games. And hopefully he can continue, you know, his form. And hopefully, I mean, I believe he's going. Is he picked in the squad to go over to South Africa?
I don't think he is. I can't remember, but I don't think he is.
He bloody well should be. So
yeah.
I was very happy for Maxi to get 100, and he's one of my favourite cricketers going around. And unfortunately, if he had been born in New South Wales, he would have played like the likes of Brad Hodge and the like. If they had been born in a different state, they might have played a lot more cricket. Dean Jones.
Well, I was actually there at that match.
Sorry, John.
That's why he asked. I think he asked for a move 2 years ago to New South Wales, and Victoria said, "No, sirree, stay here."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why Matthew Wade left, and anyway.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I was actually there at that match last Wednesday night when he made 100.
Yeah.
I was very impressed with what he was able to do, like those wickets early on, and then to come out and like look, wasn't actually. It didn't seem likely he was actually going to make 100 at one stage because Australia were getting closer to a win, but he to his credit, he got the 100 that he deserved, and it was an incredible display by him. I left the ground. I was pretty impressed by what he was able to do, and I completely agree. I think, you know, one day he should at least be in the one day side. The test side sort of, I guess that's sort of one where it's, you know, there's limited spots. It's a bit sort of a tight push and very hard to get picked for that. But he should at least be in the short format. He's a great player, and you know, the way he trains, like. I think George Bailey come out last night when he won Domestic Player of the Year. It said he tries to avoid training. Like, you know, it's. I think that's just rubbish. I'm sure he does whatever he can to try and improve his game. And he came out and played very well last Wednesday night. And hopefully he continues that now that the 2020 side go over to New Zealand to continue the series.
Yeah, most definitely. Okay, guys, now to our last segment of the night. What are we all looking forward to for the weekend?
For me, I think AFLX. I'm going on Friday night. Managed to snaffle a ticket for that one. Obviously, won't be seeing the Bulldogs play. They're playing in Sydney this weekend against the Sydney and the Brisbane side, so bit unlucky in that regard. But I'm just more intrigued to see how it goes, really, more than anything else. Have a peek. And I mean, if I don't like it, well, then you don't have to watch it. I don't have to watch it. No one else has has to watch it. But I think it will go all right. I think there'll be an okay crowd. I don't know how many people they'll get to Etihad, maybe 15,000, 20,000, quite possibly, which is more than what they'd get for a JLT game anyway. So
That's right. Yeah.
I think the overall entertainment experience might be the thing that makes it work, not just the football. I think there's, live commentary in the from the scoreboard, and there's, sitting in Baysby at different teams and all that sort of stuff. It might be sort of a bit more of an American style feel, but there's only one way to find out. If you never give it a go, you'll never know.
Yeah, that's it. Spot on. And I concur. That's what I'm looking forward to as well. Jacob, what about yourself?
Well, I am looking forward to AFLX, but I'm looking forward to a big horse race coming up this Saturday, the Group 1 Black Caviar Lightning Stakes. And what I'm really looking forward to about it is the return of Redzel. This is arguably the best sprinter in the country at the moment, and it's already won 6 in a row. I was really impressed by its Everest and its last win in the Group 1 Daily Classic on the final day of the carnival. Really looking forward to seeing Redzel return, and in the race that is named after a great sprinter that probably Australia has ever seen. But I'm looking forward to Redzel returning. It's going to be there's some good names, some good horses in the race as well. So looking forward to the Lightning Stakes, and Redzel running. Hopefully he can get up.
Magnificent. Well, gents, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Now's your opportunity. Pimp your stuff, whatever you got going on. Jacob, tell the people where they can find you and your content.
Well, you can find me over on facebook.com/thebevshow. I'm kicking off my 2018 series this Sunday at 8 p.m. That's local time in Hobart, so Australian Eastern Standard Time. And we'll be talking all things sport. I'll be answering comments and just having lots of laughs as well. It's a pretty laid-back show, and also stay tuned for the dog show as well, which is probably going to be over in the forum. So looking forward to that as well. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can, twitter.com/beverb5 for all my views.
Excellent. And John?
You can find me at Taka Speaks Out, Taka Speaks Out on Twitter. And also during the football season, if you want to listen to some quality local football, 88.3 Southern FM on your radio dial for the best call of Southern footy in 2018. Jack, and I'm sure I might see you out at a Keysborough game somewhere along the line.
Yeah, you very well may see me out there, my friend. You very well may see me out there. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, for joining us for another episode of Grandstand Gurus. This is a product of the Explosion Network. You can find all of our content over at www.explosionnetwork.com, and you can follow us on Twitter. I am at Kruse_mate. The Explosion Network is at Explosion Pod, and Grandstand Gurus is at Grandstand Gurus. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, like, subscribe, share us with your friends and with your mother. Until next time, plat plat. Keep on grandstanding.
This February, check out our YouTube and social channels for video content from RTX Sydney, where everything began for the Explosion Network crew last year. On March 3rd, we'll be running a celebratory Twitch stream to mark year 2 of the network. It'll take place 10 a.m. Sunday morning to midnight and feature the usual shenanigans, but also some exciting announcements about new content coming from the crew in 2018. So make sure you keep that Saturday free. Of course, our weekly shows continue with Pleasure Explosion on Mondays, Platinum Explosion Tuesdays, and Grandstand Gurus Thursdays, each at 12 p.m. Catch our live streams at twitch.tv/Explosion Network, and keep your targets locked on explosionnetwork.com for all our explosive content. Happy birthday, Explosion Network, but more importantly, happy birthday, me.